Welcome to the Recharge Podcast, where transformation meets innovation in just 10 minutes. Join us as we dive into the latest tools to reshape the world. It's time to power up your potential. Let's dive into this week's episode.
As I watched him struggle to get off the train, it became more apparent today than ever, and that is the fact that time catches us all. But it does catch us at different rates, and that is largely determined by our own efforts. When we sat down to discuss the issues at hand, primarily the difficulty with getting around and getting up out of a chair and the near impossibility of ascending and descending steps safely or carrying any object more than just a few pounds, we discussed the implication of maintaining strength with age. And the bottom line was the response prohibiting this from happening was that I don't like to exercise. It's too time consuming. I don't want to go to the gym. I don't like getting sweaty. And I responded as kindly as I could, well, how much do you like the current state of affairs where even walking short distances or getting out of a chair requires assistance or causes a great deal of difficulty, stress, strain, and puts you at risk for falling? I was met with blank stares, and I wish I could rewind the clock and share information 20, 30 years ago. And that is something that's been well documented in the literature, that as a person reaches the tipping point, depending on their degree of physical activity, for most Americans or people in Western societies, that's usually around 50 or 60, where there is a decline in muscle mass. This becomes a very slippery slope, particularly once a person reaches the tipping point where they lose muscle mass and strength, which is part of the normal aging process for sure. But this doesn't have to be accepted as an all or none phenomenon. It is possible, and it is well demonstrated in the literature and on social media that there are plenty of people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s that are doing amazing feats, running long distance events, lifting heavy weights, squatting, windsurfing, playing hockey. I've had personal experience playing against a group of Canadians who were in their 70s and 80s and actually skated laps around some of the members on our team. We ended up losing that game 9-2. That's sort of an aside, but the point is that the necessity and the requirement for all of us, number one, to move, and number two, to maintain physical strength as we age, has never been more important than now, with the particular explosion of chronic health conditions in the U.S. and across the world as well. What I wanted to share in this short episode was a concept of partial repetitions, or you can call them half reps or cheating reps or whatever you want to call them. There's a variety of ways to do this. And the concept is that instead of going through a full range of motion, just a partial range of motion is utilized to increase the time under tension of a particular muscle group. This is just a way to vary the strength training regimen and help preserve muscle mass or even gain muscle mass depending on a person's particular goal and fitness level. Obviously, this is something that needs to be coordinated with careful review of their history. Excuse me, I drank some Athletic Greens and it's stuck in my throat, but I'm going to continue this ad lib episode nonetheless. So there's different ways to do this. The way that I like to incorporate it is to do the partial reps at the end of a normal set. So for example, this morning in the gym, I did one exercise per body part. I didn't use excessively heavy weight. And at the end of near failure, I performed partial reps. So for example, in the bench press, when the bar was lowered on my chest and I was fatigued, I continued on with partial reps and partial reps, partial extension with my elbows bent. The opposite applies to pulling exercises such as lat pull downs or one arm lat pulls. I did actually 3 sets, starting with arms overhead, switching to arms at chest level, and then also a seated row where I performed about 30 reps standard fashion, and then finished out with just a short rep, either pulling with a limited range of motion with my arms fully extended, or completing the motion and then extending the arms a slight degree and pulling back towards the body, performing a partial rep with the elbows flexed. There's different ways to do that. Completed this with a lower body exercise, including dumbbell squats, one-legged calf raises, a leg extension, and also hamstring curls, all done with 20 to 30 reps, normal range of motion, followed by partial reps with the muscle under tension. So it's just a way to vary the strength training regimen and to break things up, to create some interest and hopefully make it more palatable to those of you who may be reluctant or resistant to exercise, because strength as we age has never been more important than right now. Be safe, be well.
Please consider leaving a review for us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. This podcast is intended solely for general informational purposes and should not be construed as professional medical advice, nor does it establish a doctor-patient relationship. Listeners are advised that the use of information and resources from this podcast is at their own discretion and risk. The content provided herein is not designed to replace professional medical guidance, diagnosis, or treatment. Individuals with medical conditions are urged to seek prompt advice and consultation from qualified healthcare professionals for any health-related issues.